Thanks for asking that question. Good morning, everyone. I feel that over the years, there's a lot of discussion between about smart cities and how cities are becoming smarter. And I think there is no certain benchmark that after you achieve a certain benchmark, you become smart city. I'll restrict my points to IT and technology achieving the social goals for a society. How can we use IT and digital infrastructure to reduce the rich and poor divide? Because these are the realities. A city can't be smarter where there are only certain sections which are rich and which are live in very high end. Though I'm guilty of selling those same properties, but then a city can't be smarter. You'll call that city slightly dumb, and it's getting there where there's a huge divide. So I feel that digital infra. I'll delve deeper as we proceed, but then I feel that the social goals should be kept in mind when we are looking at digital infrastructure, so that it's not restricted only to the privileged. Thank you. A quick input. In my discussions with sitting with the intellectuals like you in different panels, what I realized is that I think a big panel, a big issue comes in when the planning is not right. So this idea originates usually with in a bureaucrat's mind, and then there's a leadership, a political leadership, which drives this. And I think many times it's an haphazard way, or there's a messy city which they want to make it smart. I'm not talking about Dubai per se, or Abu Dhabi or Sharjah. I'm talking about in general. And I think at the planning stage, and then the governments change or the town planners change. I think that vision should be a longer term vision when the town planning itself is happening. When you're putting down the plan itself, you should have very clear ideas. How will the PPP, public private partnership, will happen? Which are the private players which will come in? What will be their revenue model? And I think. I feel that an idea stage, to answer your question, at the idea stage, the social aspects of smart city should be built in, should be embedded within it, so that they are taken care, and it should not be an afterthought. Is what my 2 cents to it will be. Uh, I think there are a lot of examples on like he mentioned, Barcelona and Barcelona Soul and the Smart Nation Initiative by Singapore. Barcelona has something called as where they use sensors to manage water flow and reduce the water wastage in their irrigation system. Similarly, there are apps for built in within the Smart Nation Initiative by Singapore, and I think where they use it for tracing the movements of senior citizens. So there are a bunch of examples. I think that's a very interesting question, and. So US for that matter, it's 2% of the total energy usage is by the data centers itself, and it's just growing. So while AI is helping, in fact, AI is actually helping these in mitigate some of the climate challenges as well. So it's a very difficult and complex topic, but then there is no way out, so to say. The AI is hungry, but then there is somebody needs to discuss that what are these new technologies helping, and who are they helping. And these discussions are happening in various forums, but I feel that, as I earlier said, that privileged versus unprivileged, and I think there's a lot of money flowing in, and thought process flowing in for easing the life of people who may the delta for them is much lesser than the delta for the people who are slightly underprivileged. So I feel, for example, the climate challenge. I mean, the US is also going through climate challenge, and most other European countries as well, India as well. But then, if you talk about many other countries, let's say parts of Africa, even Maldives, we don't know where Maldives will exist or not in decades to come, right? Unfortunately. So how is that technology helping in that? Because then when the energy consumption by data centers gets justified to a certain extent. But I think at this stage there is no answer to that energy consumption. There are innovations happening to reduce that, but I think there isn't anything substantial which has happened so far. And also the knowledge sharing between the developed countries and the underdeveloped countries. If the technological advancement is happening, I think that divide within the smart city and between the countries is also there. I think it's also very important that the tech know-how is also shared, and there's not happening between Africa and European nations. But I think that pace has to be much faster. The data sharing, like for example, climate challenge is one of the biggest challenge for the African nations, for example. But I think a lot of gets talked about in the forums, but when you actually speak behind the doors, you come to know that much less has happened. So I think that transparency has to be there, and that data sharing needs to happen, because those are the countries which are into real problems. That's a very interesting question. I'm so glad you asked that. Usually people don't, but it's a very important aspect, and I think a lot of explanation needs to go into describing why a tech is why government or private sector is implementing a particular tech. Because it's an ocean in itself, and I'll give you an example of contact tracing apps during COVID-19. There is a lot of these days, the world is going through a big issue of fake news, right? Somebody somewhere drops a nasty message and shares it across, and it spreads like a viral message. So contact tracing apps, governments all across the world were facing issues where there were a lot of unknowns which were spread out, that government will capture your data, and if you're found having COVID, then this will happen, that will happen, and whatnot. And then there are those pictures which are floating around on television, scary pictures. So I think storytelling is extremely important, and mostly what I have as a communication professional, what I have seen is that least amount of energy and time is spent on storytelling and narrative building. So narrative sometimes is looked at as a negative word, but then actually, unless you and at the planning stage itself, when you are implementing it, you should be clear that some real life stories need to be broadcasted, and I think media is a very important stakeholder. So and journalists, you can't just create a press release and send it out to the journalists and expect that journalist to comprehend. Right, so that media training is also very important. And I think, and this would be taken in the stride, and I think as far as the storytelling is concerned, I think the narrative building, when we are talking about it, because see, there's always a skepticism when a new technology comes in. People will always be looking at it with a suspicion, and this is where the media and the storytelling plays a big role. So I think some level of investment should go into it, and a real life story should be created and should be broadcasted, and it should be explained by the leadership and using the media as well. A quick point. I think I will say that a lot of governments are still dealing with the legacy approach to cybersecurity. It needs to be cybersecurity is a much bigger threat than if we used to see in sci-fi movies a few decades back or 20 years back. And I think the approach has to be, the smarter governments are now looking at proactive approach rather than reactive approach. Something has happened and you are dealing with it, instead of predict the what could be the problems. Of course, it is difficult because the hackers are usually several steps ahead. But then I think, again, it comes down to the policy planning. I think there should be stronger policies around cybersecurity, because it is becoming a big challenge now. I will again stress on community and the social angle approach. I think when the town planning is happening, the urban planning itself, the planning stage, there should be a lot of focus on the social aspect of, while the tech progress is important, but then is it reaching to the last mile? I think that is a very important aspect to it, and I think Deepak and Ahmed has already covered very well. Thank you.